let's talk about what JUnit actually is, as well as a couple tips for making your testing code really concise and neat. So I'm going to start by just reminding you what we've done with JUnit, which is we've used a method called org.junit.assert equals, which takes two arguments, tests if they're equal, and if they're not, then the program will terminate with some kind of verbose message. Now, if all of the asserts pass, you get no message at all, it's blank. But if I were to modify my test, let's say, so that it breaks, then we get an error message, okay? So we've seen that. So JUnit does more than that. There's other assert methods like assert equals, assert false, assert not null, and they are listed at this link. You can go check them out. There's other more complex things you could do with JUnit that are great. We're not going to talk about them in lecture, but see Lab 3, and you don't have to learn them for this class, but you might find them useful. Now there are two things that I do want to introduce during lecture that are very important. One is what will make the code behave more nicely. Okay? So there's something known as an annotation, and the goal here is I want to address the fact that these messages are kind of ugly, and then it's a little annoying to have to invoke all of my tests manually, that you don't get a message if it works. If I want to focus on only one test, I have to comment it out. That's just annoying. So my solution here is I'm going to annotate each test with org.junit.test with an @ sign at the front. So it looks like this, org.junit.test, no semicolon, org.junit.test, org.junit.test. And then I'm actually going to delete my main method entirely. And now in IntelliJ, when I say run, well, it's going to yell at me and it's going to say no main method. But if I go to run and I click run, I don't know, I find that a little confusing, but I click run. Now, instead of running the main method, which is what this icon refers to, I'm going to use this left pointing red triangle, right pointing green triangle, and now it'll run all my tests. And what's nice about it is, well, actually, sorry, I forgot to do something. It says method should not be static. So there's another step I need, which is to change my methods to not static. That's just how it is. Now when I run my tests, it'll run all 3 tests, and it will count how many failed, how long it took, and give you a nicer output. So it formats the output better, and it summarizes everything that happened. 3 tests done, 1 failed. And you can even see here, this one's green, and this one's red. And when you finally get all your tests working, and you run your code, you get, wait, oops, an egg have I. And finally, when you're done, you get a green bar and you feel good and it feels like you're in a forest. It's so nice. Okay. Now what's going on here is IntelliJ is, instead of calling main, it's calling a JUnit runner that runs all the tests, tabulates the results, and so I'm using this default runner you don't even know about. You can actually do this all from the command line instead. Lab 3 will explain how to do that, but the ultimate result of all of this is your code behaves more nicely. Now there's a little bit of black magic here, right? This is strange, and we're back to the first lecture where all of a sudden there's all this stuff we don't quite understand. There are extra slides at the end of this lecture set. I don't think I'll do a video on it, but it talks more about how this works. Okay, but for now, all you need to know is you put this magic org.junit test thing and change your running in IntelliJ so it's these little triangles, and it will behave how you want. You can actually run individual tests, by the way, by clicking run test. And at that point, it will just run the one test. And if you want to switch back, you go over here, and instead of doing test sort, you just pick the top level test sort again with the triangles, and you get all 3 tests. Okay, last thing. It is annoying to have code that looks like this. So we can use import statements in Java to make things simpler. So the first import I'm going to do is org.junit.test. And what that will do is, instead of having to type out org.junit test, I could just say test everywhere. After the midterm, we'll talk about what imports do in Java, but for now, it's just some black magic you'll have to trust me on. So right now, we're back to where we started, but we only have @test. And then to avoid having to type this out over and over, I'm going to say import static org.junit.assert.star. Okay? And once I've done that, I can eliminate any instance of org.junit assert and end up with much simpler code. And any JUnit tests you look at in the world will look like that. Okay? So this is all just shorthand for what we saw before. These import statements just make my code a little less verbose. So that's it as far as JUnit testing. In the next and final video of this lecture series, I'll do some discussion about testing philosophy, and then we're done for the day.